Hello and welcome again. Thank you very much for coming here again to learn from how we can help to improve our language skills. Today I would recommend, if you want to improve your language, in this case English, to first of all study phrases. To study complete phrases. Instead of studying vocabulary, study complete phrases of the language. Second, study idioms. Now, what we call idiomatic expressions, you need to study these idiomatic expressions. And last but not the least, slangs. There are lots of slangs that young people use in speaking that you cannot find in the books. They are not written in the books. Because when you read a book, a novel, newspaper, you will hardly see slangs used in writing. You don't. But when you move away from the books and go into the streets or listen to people on the streets, you would hear them use lots of slangs, lots of idiomatic expressions, and lots of phrases. For example, in English, we say money but lots of young people would call this quid in England. So if you're not used to quid, you would never know it means money. So what I'm trying to say in essence is you will have to study phrases to improve your communication skills, because if you have 10 phrases, you can make more than 100 sentences. But if you have 10 vocabulary, it will be difficult for you to make 100 sentences with them. It will be very difficult. So if you learn phrases, set expressions. For example, how are you today? How are you going? How do you do? These are expressions in English that you can't change them or you can modify them in a different form. So these are special things we say in English that are always there and they will always be the same. We have idiomatic expressions in English. You've got to learn these idiomatic expressions and know what they mean in context. And finally, the slangs. A lot of young people speak in slangs. If you listen to them and they tell you exactly what these slangs mean, then you would be able to understand them a lot easier than if you don't. If you learn English or any language through the books alone, you would miss out a lot of things. When you listen to real native speakers after reading so many books, you would find there's a discrepancy between what you know and what they're saying. So if to avoid all of that, you need to listen to people speaking, try to find out the phrases they're using, ask them what these phrases mean. The idioms, because a lot of time people speak with idiomatic expressions and the kids or young people mostly use a lot of slangs to speak. So if you know how these slangs are used, what they mean, you would be able to understand them. If and when you watch films, there are slangs and idiomatic expressions and phrases used. And so you would be able to understand them quite easier than if you do not listen to these things, or if you do not learn the phrases. So study the phrases, idiomatic expressions, and the slangs of the language to improve. You can't do it otherwise. Learning a language is easy if you know how. And I am here to tell you from my own experience what I did when I came into France to learn French, so that you can apply it to any other language to improve. After all languages nearly obey the same rules. They nearly obey the same rules. So if you apply the same rule, you can learn any language anywhere in the world. But one thing I'm sure of is, if you apply the same rules used in learning your mother tongue, believe me, you would learn any language quite easy. If you listen to people, do not study the grammar of the language first, and then study phrases, idiomatic expressions, and the slangs of the language by listening to the people, listening to the native speakers. So that by the time you come into the language proper, you get to one-on-one, your ears would have been used to listening to the sound structure, the speed of which people speak, native speakers speak the language, so that by the time you listen to them, say, oh, I understand what you're saying. But if you're not used to listening to the native speakers, you don't know the phrases they use, the idiomatic expressions and the slangs, even if you have studied for 10 years, by the time you confront yourself with the language face to face, you'll be surprised at how much you don't know because you're not obeying these rules. And until next time, please keep speaking up.